So now let's talk about animating your portraits in Mugenhook. So this feature allows you to use a character's animation as a select screen portrait. To use this option, set Hook Animated Portraits Enable Animation Scale and Display Position to True in the INI file. The installation steps are pretty tedious, so follow me. Open your animatedportraits.dat file located in your CFG folder with a text editor. This will be where you will specify to Mugenhook what animations you want a specific character to perform. And it's not mentioned in the documentation, but apparently you need to point to the character Kung Fu Man in order for the feature to work. So find a spare Kung Fu Man lying around and input it here. It doesn't matter what numbers the row and column are for him. It doesn't even matter where Kung Fu Man is in your Mugen folder as long as you reference the location. Since I only have the character to test the animated portraits feature, I keep mine in the CFG folder. Next, start up your Mugen and verify the feature is working. You should see the sprites of your character being animated on the screen. If you made it to the versus screen without error and you don't see your characters, then that means that they are severely misaligned and are showing up off screen. This is the step where, similar to the sliding portraits feature, you have to manually align your portraits to fit the desired area of your versus screen. So a lot of trial and error. After you've done that and you're now seeing your animated portraits, you should notice by now that the timing of your character's idle stances are off. This is because Kung Fu Man's idle stance is being used as the default for your entire character roster. The unfortunate part of using this feature is you must insert every character manually, adjust various settings, and manually declare the sprites of the animations used. Before leaving, be sure to make a note of the row and column info of the character you plan to adjust using this shell window. Back to your animated portraits data file, we'll input the information under operator mode 0 to your desired characters in a horizontal fashion. The first number A is the row and the second B is the column of where the character is located. The next two numbers, C and D, will be the animation state number of your idle stance. This will be state def 0 for every character per the special state number standard of the common1.cns file. The first number will be player 1's idle stance and the second player 2 idle or alternate idle stance. The next two numbers F and G will be the state number of the animation played when the character is selected. This will typically be a taunt or a you win animation. G is the file name of the character. Self-explanatory, but just remember it must point to the animation file with the .air extension. Finally, H and I will be the decimal numbers that represent the scale of the character using XY values. So let's use Han Badal by Ahuron as an example. I already saw in the show window that his position on the select screen is row 0, column 2, which I'll input here. Then I'll open up his character def file in the Fighters Factory and head to animation. Here you can verify that the idle stance state number is 0, so we'll input in double zeros. Next, we'll open up the frameloader.dat file from your CFG folder in a text editor. We use this file to manually declare the sprites we want the animated portrait feature to use. And I mean all the sprites. So going back to Han Badal, he uses 7 total sprites for his idle stance, ranging from 00 to 07. So we put that in the frameloader file. However, if another character like Agito uses 15 sprites starting from 00 to 015, then you simply increase the sequence to 15 in the frameloader. You don't have to repeat numbers the more characters you add. You just need to declare every sprite that is used regardless of sequence repetition. We'll do the same with the select animation. Find a suitable animation that activates upon selecting the character. For Han Badal, I'm going with state 181, which is this. Let's add it to the main .dat file. On the animation tab, I can also see here that the last index number is 4, and if I check back on the sprites tab, I can further verify that the 4th index is indeed the last sprite of the animation. With that info, I'll once again head to the frame loader and put in those sprites and save. Finally, I'll add the path to his air file for the last line on the main .dat file and hit save. You should now see the character performing his idle animations as intended rather than the Kung Fu Man timing. The scale options I didn't mention deals with characters that are often too big on the select screen. For instance, Hibiki from Central Fiction is far too large by default, so using the scale option to 0.3 can bring him down to a tolerable size. And even if you don't need to use this option, you must declare a scale for every character, or else the next character with an omitted scale number will adopt the previous character scale, which will mess up the size of the portrait. Lastly, a fun fact is that the sliding portraits feature mentioned in my last video is also compatible with your animated portraits. So my thoughts on this feature is overall, I don't recommend it actually. At least not for large Mugen rosters, and here's why. Some characters just flat out don't work for no apparent reason. Agito, for instance, is provided all the correct info needed for the feature to work, but looking at his idle stance, it simply disappears after a handful of sprites play for no apparent reason. Other characters' color palettes seem to be randomly corrupted. Many characters from entire series, such as those from anime fighters, will be way too large, leading to painstaking manual fixes. And the end of the last point is the biggest con of all. Everyone needs to be inputted manually. When you turn on animated portraits, it makes the change to your entire roster and not just individual characters, so you can't decide to use it for some and not for others. It's a light switch. So unless you manually declare each character and input the frame sequences, then they will all have Kung Fu Man's timing, which looks weird to say the least. So not only do you have to spend as much time as you did populating your original select.def screen, but you have to manually do things like find a suitable select animation, locate and input the state number, locate the sprites used, then input both of them in two separate files. Now imagine having to do this with a roster of hundreds of characters, and you can easily see how the tedium isn't worth it. Even worse, imagine having a large roster using animated portraits and you decide to rearrange a single character to a different spot in your select screen list. Since it reads every character using the row and column method, you now have to fix the order number in your animated portraits data file for every single successive character past the point of the edit. Completely impractical. So my final opinion is, if you have a small to moderately sized roster and you want to spruce up your select screen, then give it a try. If not, pass and look for these type of features in plugins like the Ad004 screen pack or improved functionality from Ikeman Go features.